Hello and welcome to another video, and today I wanted to talk about something that actually just happened. PlayStation, Sony, they announced a PlayStation Classic. They're getting into the retro business, kind of like Nintendo did with a plug-and-play machine. They're doing their own. They're trying to capitalize on nostalgia, much like Nintendo has for the last 2 years or so, and they're dipping their toe in that water, so to speak. Unfortunately, the PlayStation Classic kind of sucks. And we're going to discuss it today. We're going to go over what's been announced, and I'm going to kind of give you guys my opinion and the realization of why I'm not buying one. So anyways, let's go ahead and dive in to the PlayStation Classic. So as you guys can see a little bit behind me here, I have a very modest collection of original PlayStation games. The original PlayStation is one of my favorite systems of all time, and the thought and the idea of a PlayStation Classic is really potentially awesome. And initially when I saw it being announced, I was really excited about it until all of the information on it kind of fumbled out. Unfortunately, PlayStation Classic has a lot of negative things going for it, and it really pains me to say I'm not going to buy one. And I kind of weighed the pros and the cons. I thought about purchasing one just to have one in my collection, much like the NES and the Super NES ones were. However, there are some major downfalls with this one, and we just have to discuss them. First thing that really bums me out about the PlayStation Classic, the controllers don't have analog sticks. A lot of PlayStation games that were awesome, that were great, that we remember, came after that analog controller was released. Now, yes, I understand they're trying to capitalize on the 1995 release of this system before the analog controllers were released, and that's cool and everything, but do you want to play Ridge Racer 4 on your PlayStation Classic without analog? I don't, and that's going to be terrible. Instead, it has the original PlayStation controller, which was just a D-pad. And that works for some games, like Tekken's on there. That's fine. Final Fantasy VII is on this thing. If you needed another reason to buy Final Fantasy VII somewhere, here's your reason why. But it also potentially means that later down the road, when other people hack the machine and let's put other games on it, those games aren't going to function properly because they don't have the right controller. And you know that this thing's going to have a proprietary connector for the controller to go into the unit. It's not going to be your standard PlayStation controller. There's no way that that would work with this thing. It's a huge bummer, and I just don't think that it's going to go over well with the hardcore PlayStation fans and the hardcore gaming fans that want this thing. Secondly, there's no AC power in the box. So if you've bought a NES Classic or a Super Nintendo Classic, it came with a USB cable that would plug into a little AC adapter that you plug into your wall. That's fine. This system comes with just that USB cable, no power adapter. And then Sony kind of came out and said, hey, yeah, you can use your cell phone wall adapter and that will work. Huh? What? Why not just put that in the box? This thing costs $99. This is a $100 item that you're selling, and you're not going to put an AC adapter in the box? This thing costs $20 more than the Super Nintendo Classic, and that had an AC power adapter in the box. This thing doesn't have that. It's $100, and that's my third point on this. It's $100. This thing will have 20 games. It is $100. Yes, it comes with 2 controllers. Yes, it's 20 PlayStation games. It's $100, and it's not going to be hackable. I mean, yes, will it be hackable? Yes, I'm sure the internet will find a way to hack this machine and put more games on it, unless Sony really doubles down on cracking down on this thing. I don't see them doing it or wasting their time with that. However, those games aren't going to function properly without an analog controller, so then it begs the question of what's the point? Sony already came out and said, we're not planning to add a store to this thing or trophy support or the ability for you to buy more games to put on it, which means that we'll have to putting ROMs on this thing. But why are you going to want to put a ROM on this thing if you can't play it correctly? So that's just a huge disappointment. Everything surrounding this thing is a huge disappointment. Yes, it's coming out December 3rd. Yes, it's $99. Yes, they're trying to capitalize on nostalgia for the original PlayStation, and something that I opened that article on my phone and said, hey, this is really cool, and the more I read, I just got more and more bummed out about it. And the other point I want to make in this video, the final point I want to make in this video, is that there are already so many ways to play a lot of these games at a better capacity than this $99 unit. So if you have a Vita, if you have a PS4, if you have a PS3, hell, maybe you still have your original PlayStation, maybe you have a PS2 that plays PS1 games, any PlayStation 3 will play original PlayStation discs. There are so many ways that you can go out and play these games today that this thing is kind of a moot point. It's not like the NES Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic where, yes, some of those games are very expensive and difficult to find today. A lot of these PlayStation games aren't that hard to find, aren't that expensive, and are in a multitude of other areas that are easier to access than a $99 emulator. So the whole point of this thing just comes off as a real bummer. They're not putting anything on it thus far, and again, they've only announced 5 of the 20 games, but they're not putting anything on it thus far that makes me go, yeah, I really want to play through this game on that unit like that. I don't want to play Final Fantasy VII that way. You know why? Because there is a better way to play Final Fantasy VII right now. It's the PS4 and Steam version that's also coming to Xbox and Nintendo Switch next year. That's a great version of the game. That's arguably the best way to play that game now. This version isn't going to be that version. It's a moot point. And the other games on here, Ridge Racer 4, Tekken, and so on, I think Jump Flash is one of the games. There are better ways to play those games right now than this unit. So for $99, you're buying something that just seems like more of a hindrance than something that should be celebrated. And that led me to my final thing for me. I looked at it and said, well, do I want to buy this thing, not open it, and just put it on a shelf next to my Super Nintendo Classic and my NES Classic boxes, which are open, and I use those things on the regular, but I wouldn't use this thing, and I decided it's just not worth my time. It's not worth hunting down. I also don't think this thing's going to be as hard to get as a Nintendo or Super Nintendo Classic because Sony will make a lot of these, and they're going to anticipate this thing being a real hot item come the holidays. So it's perfect for that kind of thing, or the gamer that maybe has been away from games for a while but wants to recapture that nostalgia of the late 90s with the PlayStation. But for me personally, for us hardcore gamers out there, for us that already have ways to play a lot of these games, PlayStation Classic just kind of sucks, and it's really disappointing. And I do also think, and this is me being cynical, but I do think that next Christmas, so we'd be talking Christmas 2019, you're going to get not the PlayStation Classic, but a reboot of this thing called the PS1 Classic. It'll be version 2.0, and maybe it has 20 different games, but I bet you those 20 different games have analog controls and an analog controller with it. Those are my thoughts on the PlayStation Classic. I'm bummed out about it. I'm not getting one. I'd love to know your comments in the comment section below. Are you interested in the PlayStation Classic? Are you going to buy a PlayStation Classic? Do you think I'm an idiot for not buying a PlayStation Classic? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.